Nice meeting everybody. Hope everyone is feeling great, seeing everyone in person. I'm so used to seeing everyone in 720p on Zoom. It's a nice change. So my name is Sondran. Once again, really excited to be here. Before I start, I just want to let everyone know, bidets, the life changers, okay? You get into a car wash. That's what my friend told me. He knows I'm a car guy. He's like, you go in, you get a full car wash experience, and you get out. You don't have to wash your hands. That's what he said to me. So it's a life changer. But today I'm going to talk about competitive intelligence. This is a really, really exciting thing for me. I'm a very competitive guy. And it's actually very important to your product positioning, as April mentioned. So something that I know that I'm thinking about all the time is how do you compete in an extremely competitive environment, right? Docebo LMS, very competitive. The other one that's really competitive is fintech. So everyone here has expenses, personal expenses, your company makes payments. I'm going to be using examples from Airbase today of how we go ahead and differentiate and help our sales team compete in an ever-evolving competitive landscape. It's really difficult. So just a little bit of background about me. I've worked at other startups, B2B startups, big ones like Microsoft, smaller ones, mid-size, 100 headcount to 800 headcount, and leading product marketing teams there. And what I want to really do is think about how do you go ahead and turn PMM to be strategic. And so that's what I really fell in love with PMM about. Funny enough, you were talking about accounting. I was a former corporate accountant. So I was doing a lot of this stuff, and I transitioned over to product marketing. I actually want to know how many people here, stand up, came from a different industry outside of marketing. I came from accounting. Okay, that's quite a bit, right? That's 40%. So that's pretty cool. And what I love about product marketing is the fact that you can feel like you own your business, right? I'm thinking about so many different things, as a product marketer, analyst relations, competitive intelligence, product positioning, messaging, all these different pieces, and it really helps drive your business. That's what I'm excited about being here and talking about this. But when I think about this specifically, product marketing, you're in the middle of the product org, customer success, marketing, sales, you're quarterbacking with all these different teams. April mentioned how important it is. You can't do any of this in a silo, absolutely not, and you can't do competitive intelligence in a silo. Right now, our product marketing team is 6 people. We have a PM org of 24. We have a much bigger sales team. So how do you scale? I'm going to talk about how you do that effectively in an organization to provide value for your competitive intelligence program so that hopefully you can get investment into it because everyone sees the value. And that's really important as well. And what I'm going to do is talk about in that piece, actually in the previous slide, the one piece that was missing was competitive intelligence. And the reality is, like in a fintech org today, we're managing all expenses. There are so many competitors. Every time we have a Slack channel, we have our sales team saying, we have a new competitor here. We need a battle card. A new competitor here every single day. And the reality is you need to kind of focus your time and resources on the ones that make the most sense and that are most material so that you can actually succeed. And another thing that I'll call out is, as a product marketer, in order to actually get your product positioning correct, right, and to actually win in these competitive environments, you not only, as a product marketer, need to be an expert of your own product, of your own market, what's happening in the industry, but you actually need to know what your competitors are doing, right? I'm going to use the sport analogy. A lot of people in sports, they don't just train about how to be great in their sport, they're always researching the competition and how to beat them. So that's really important as well. And I'm going to talk about Airbase specifically because I want to use real-life examples of how we deal with this in a really competitive environment. So if you think about expense management, everyone's probably heard of Expensify, right? Yep. Your accounting and finance teams, they probably use a solution like a Bill.com, right, to pay all their invoices. Then you may have a corporate credit card, maybe an Amex for your executives. And so what Airbase is doing, and we're thinking about this when we thought about how are we going to cut through these 100 different competitors that all are talking about managing expenses for the office of the CFO, the controller, the assistant accounting manager, whatever else it is, we need to find an actual differentiated story that is unique to us that goes into our narrative, right? Because you can't just go ahead and say, we helped do your expenses, right? That's not going to cut it in this competitive market. And so one thing to do is you actually need to examine really deeply and understand what competitors that you have, either direct or indirect, and what segment of the market they're actually targeting. Now, this is really important, and this is what our CRO often puts into my head is focus, focus, focus is what makes companies successful. So in this market that's super ever evolving, I just talked about some of these, Expensify, Bill.coms, all these other competitors here that are offering a corporate card solution. Then we have companies that are targeting the mid-market space, right, that go ahead and target the office of the CFO. Then we have companies that are solving this problem at the enterprise space. Think Coupa, big, costly implementations, year and a half of change management. It's kind of a nightmare. And so what you want to do is you want to enable your sales team to, and your organization actually, to go ahead and win, and not just kind of throw a dart at the board and hopefully it lands and then come out of it and say, well, did we win? Did we not? Right? Or end up like him. And we don't want to do that. So really, what I want to do is talk about today how, on top of everything else that we cover as a product marketer, how you can go ahead and enable your competitive intelligence to really make you a strategic powerhouse in the business. And in my last 3 companies, PMM has fallen into competitive intelligence. I'm actually curious, stand up, who has a purview of competitive intelligence today? Wow. Stand up if you do. Purview, like you own competitive intelligence to some degree. Okay. Okay. How many of you will soon be doing it? So stand up. Interesting. So I hope that you can come out of this session and say, actually, we should really focus on our competitors, especially in a competitive market where you need to differentiate. It's very, very important. I'm going to speak to a little bit of why. And so you're going to have direct and indirect competitors, right? So this is how I think of it. I just told you, you have all these different solutions that manage all of this spend in a business, right? And as an accountant, we have to go do research and buy those individual pieces, right? So I'm going to call those our indirect competitors because Airbase is solving for a broader platform. We're saying we solve all of those problems in one solution, okay? I need to understand what's this landscape. Then I need to think about what products do they sell? How do they position themselves? How much do they cost? All of these questions, like these are actually deep, intricate questions. That means you're going to have to do a lot of research or use some tools to go ahead and help you with this research, right? More questions. What does their sales process look like? What channels are they doing? What do their emails look like? How often do they run sales? What are their events and webinars and blogs? All these pieces to understand how they're marketing their product and how they're positioning themselves. It's a lot of work, right? You're spending 20, 30 minutes a week maybe. You have a Slack channel. You've invited your sales team to go ahead and bring in all this insight. You've signed up to Google Alerts. You're exploring their help centers. You're getting a lot of information and from a lot of different competitors. So you need to think about which are the ones that you're actually seeing in the sales cycle most often, and you need to focus on them. And what you're going to do is identify gaps in the market. You're going to develop new products and services that can help you gain more market share and uncover emerging trends. So what does that look like? So when I came into Airbase, for example, I was a corporate accountant in the past, but I still didn't understand this huge evolving landscape. Our sales team was struggling because every single deal had a competitive scenario. It was crazy. Every single deal had various different competitors. So very competitive. So there's only one way to do this at the time. I had to go deep. So we literally went ahead and created an Excel doc. It wasn't sexy or anything, and went down capability by capability across all of our main direct and indirect competitors. And this was a pretty arduous process to actually find out how do we technically and by our value prop differentiate versus the competition. So it was a pretty difficult process, all in all. And I don't know why the screen went black, but there it goes. So I purposely made it like this so you could see how horrific it is. But basically, what this gave us is just a little understanding of, who are all the competitors on the right, what features and capabilities do they have, and this gave me some sort of a heat map to understand where do we actually differentiate in this sea of disgusting competitors that we want to go ahead and beat, right? It was really difficult at the time. So we won't spend too much time in here, but this gave me an understanding of how we differentiate. And so in Airbase's specific example, we said, we sell into accounting and finance teams for mid-market organizations that need to consolidate all their non-payroll spending, all that spending I talked about in one solution. And so for accounting teams, what does this mean? The biggest problems, the problems that I faced, I actually quit accounting because of these problems, and I went over to marketing, which is funny. But we were wasting so much time. My full-time job was actually doing a whole bunch of the stuff that Airbase automates today. Accounting, general ledger, journal entries, putting them over to the general ledger, and going ahead and doing all these manual entries during month end, right? Saving cost, money, time, and reducing risk. So these are the most important things that mattered to these people in these industries, the office of the CFO. And so that's how we differentiated. When people came to us and said, oh, April mentioned you don't want to displace your competitors in a bad way, but you want to say, oh, do you want this competitor? Well, they're actually a competitor that's mainly made for founders and SMBs, right? Oh, do you want to look at a Coupa? Is that the right solution for you? Oh, actually, that's for like 20,000 employee headcount companies, and the cost is like $500,000 with an implementation cost just as much in the first year. So what you need to do actually to really understand how you're going to help your sales team is really understand what segment you're targeting, who is the persona that you're targeting, what are their unique pain points, and how you solve it in a differentiated way. In this case, we found it was our depth across having the breadth of the solution and our depth of our accounting functionality that actually solved those manual recurring problems that accounting teams faced every day. So when I think about how you can support all of these different teams, so it's not actually just your sales team, your AEs, but it's also your customer success team. In competitive scenarios, you can believe that your competitors are going into your accounts and disturbing them and hopefully not churning them, but you want to arm them with really, I think about 3 different types of assets. April mentioned this, it's really important, but you never want to go into a feature dump in the beginning. How you want to talk about this is why uniquely you can solve their problem and your narrative and story. Right? So I talk about these assets in 3 different ways. This is my thinking. Quick dismiss. So you want to immediately displace the competition. Right? I'm talking to a prospect. They're looking at all these other point solution competitors. They're looking at us. They're saying, why is this solution not good for me? You want to say, you know what? That solution is good for somebody, but they're made for SMBs, and have proof of that in your backup when you talk about that. Right? Oh, how about this solution? Well, actually, that's a really heavy solution for you. Do you actually need that with your size of company? Because we can solve for all these problems for you today with no implementation or change management. So you need to think about this. This is a quick dismiss to get them out of the sales cycle immediately. But let's say that doesn't work, right? Then you want to differentiate with your story and your ICP. You need to really make sure that they understand that this solution was created for them, and your story and your brand narrative should be about that. Right? And so when we go ahead and pitch to prospects, the story is our founder's story, which is he went to the accounting and finance teams of these organizations, these mid-sized companies, and they built the solution for them. So we really have to go ahead and leverage that story because we don't want to go into a feature match. This is going to be terrible. But when you do get to the bottom end of the sales cycle, it's near the end, they're going to start asking questions about features. That's where you need to technically dismantle them. And that little analysis that I did helped us. So when you think about those competitive landing pages where you do have some of those feature capabilities, those comparison charts, this will help you give that. The sales team uses that as well, deeper out into the sales cycle. And it's also good for lead gen, which I'll talk about in a moment. And so what does all this do, right? It's actually more, and it's beyond just helping your sales team sell. So this is going to inform your long-term strategy, right? So product marketing at Airbase is brought into all of the strategic discussions around our product roadmap, our strategic development, where we're going in the market. Right? We want to go ahead and identify all this, but in terms of sales and customer success, it's going to help with our storytelling, our messaging, our positioning. And this stuff, by the way, evolves. It really does evolve. Right? I think in the last 3 years, right, we saw this huge run-up of valuations of all these companies, and everyone was just trying to capture all these different markets. And a lot of companies went and crossed different segments, right? And they said, you know what? We're solving for this segment so well, let's go ahead and expand out to all these different segments. And then what we end up finding out is actually focus is really key. And now companies are really focusing on who their target segment is to go ahead and have efficiency and cost. It's going to help you build battle cards, right? One-pagers, talk tracks, objection handling, the comparison feature pages that I talked about, pricing and packaging. That's a big component for us when we look at how do we go ahead as a disruptor in this industry with this value prop, how do we price and package effectively versus the competition? Price is always a thing, right? You need to understand the pricing of your competitors. Analyst relations, this is a big one. So for us specifically, we're creating this new category, spend management. Analysts don't know what that is. If I asked anyone here, what is spend management? None of you raise your hand. If you do, then great. Expenses, you all know expense management. Great, that's what we're running up against, right? And so you understanding your positioning and giving your take on the market is not only important to prospects, but important to analysts as well. How many raise of hands cover analyst relations to a degree? Okay, great, so we have people. Very, very important, especially for as you go up market, they require that. Customer reviews is another piece, and I'll talk about that as well. But these are the types of things that help your organization succeed, right? And all of this really is possible when you have this knowledge. And so I can say to you right now today, like through a lot of this stuff, the product marketing team at Airbase knows our competitors just as good as we know our own product, which is valuable and really good. So what I'll talk about a little bit, so quick dismiss assets. I want to show some like real life examples of what some of those could be. So they could be like battle cards. Now, obviously covered off a lot of the stuff just for, whatever, privacy, whatever. Ramp, we have these battle cards, we have a feature comparison, we have a landing page, we give this over to a sales team, that's great. When we talk about differentiation and ICP, we lead with that story around the consolidated value prop, right? We don't want to get into features. Then we also want to add validation. So April mentioned, people look for customer reviews, depending on your segment of the market. In the SMB and mid-market space, across my experience, they look at customer reviews. Use the accountant example, what would I do? I would ask whoever's on my team, go research that software. What would they do? They'd go online and see what other accounting managers went ahead and started using to solve their problems. They would go on maybe G2 Crowd or something, for example. And that's great. And so that's why customer reviews and advocacy is really important. And one specifically that I call out, because April is really good at this, obviously awesome, you want to differentiate. How many people will say, oh, we're the #1 in G2, whatever else it is? Great. You know what we will tell them? Go on G2, look how many of those reviews came from people like you, right? How many of those reviews came from people like you? And then you can really make sure that you define who those reviews are. So for the office of the CFO, all our reviews are coming from your business teams, right? This is a solution that's tailored for you. That's really important. And then you can point out the stuff specifically, right? Best accounting and finance products of 2022. So you want to take these opportunities to actually put validation that's specific to that market and that persona that you're targeting. Then there's these competitive comparisons, right? So this is where, now you're further down the sales cycle, right, on this feature stuff. Hopefully you didn't need to come to this point. But if you needed to, it's there. This supports your sales team. This is like a slide, for example, and then you have a competitive page that gets linked there. This is just some example stuff. So how do you track the outcomes through your competitive intelligence program? This is a lot of investment. Let me tell you, it is a lot of investment. All of this time you're putting in, especially if you're in a lean startup, we have a PMM team that's, I think, 6-to-1 ratio with product, which is kind of low. So we're trying to be really lean and efficient. But what you want to do is track the ROI and the value that this has added to your business so that you can actually get further investment from your organization, which is what I was able to do at Airbase in my previous companies. But what you can do is, competitive pages, they drive tons of awareness, MQLs from leads, pipeline and revenue, and we track all that. So I've worked with our digital team to track that. That's one great metric, bang. I can say this has driven this much revenue and pipeline from the business, awesome. Sales enablement and training, specifically pipeline velocity and win rate. This is one that's often kind of overlooked, but it's so, so valuable. And this is one that I've actually used to go ahead and bring up additional resources for my team. But basically, there are tools out there that allow you to do this. You're creating what? For your product launches, for your competitor stuff, you're creating videos, one-pagers, competitive comparisons, battle cards. You've got this whole collection of assets, and you're praying to God that your sales team's actually using this and that you're providing value. There are tools out there that will track. Let's say you're on Gmail, they're emailing a prospect, that prospect's on Salesforce, like a HighSpot, for example. It will track that you've sent that attachment to them. It'll track that they've read it. It'll track how long they've stayed on it for, all of this jazz. And then it gets marked in Salesforce, and you can track that as pipeline influence, because it is influencing pipeline. So that's like some stuff that you could do there. And then guiding strategy. I think this is more around that product development, the strategy of where your company is going in the future, especially for these markets that are fast growing. It's very often that you actually pivot your strategy, right? In different organizations of different size, maybe it's different, but in my experience of companies from 200 to 800 headcount, those type of startups, Series B, Series C, that strategy can change, right? I think with COVID, lots of people's strategies changed. And so what you want to do is put PMM in a position to be in that competitive table or the strategic table in your organization. And that's what I love about product marketing, right? Is that you could bring all this insight, you're really seen as a subject matter expert, and not only can you provide real quantifiable business impact, right? But you can also sit there and actually give real valuable insight to the business and to grow the business. And so with this, you're able to get investment, whether it's for tooling or for headcount and resources to continue to provide this value. And so I think the one key takeaway out of all of this is you really need to understand your positioning. And how you can actually do that is to understand not only the market, right, your product, your competitors, but you need to package all of that together to really get down to it and get into the details. And it's not easy work, right? So go ahead, put that investment in. Maybe it's tooling, maybe you have to do it the manual way, but that's the only real way, truly, that I've seen product marketing teams be really impactful in their organizations. And that's how you have your CEO, your CRO, all those different folks bring in product marketing into those strategic discussions without you having to necessarily like beg for it or anything. So they just come to you for it, which is awesome. So that was it. I hope this was helpful. I know personally for me, I come to these sessions, I think this has been my fourth time at PMA. I learn 20% of the nuances, and then I validate and make sure that I'm not going crazy 80%. So coming out of April session, I'm like, okay, I think I'm in the right direction here, which is awesome. And I look forward to seeing the rest of the sessions. It'll be great as well. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to help. Also, happy to help provide some custom assets that I've created. I've used PMA's templates for sure, but I've also created custom ones that I feel has been really powerful for me as well, and I can share those. Awesome. Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Sondren.
Do you have questions?
We got time for questions for sure. So everyone toss your questions in. While that's loading, if we have one from the audience, anyone wants to? No. Do we got one in the back? Yep, there you go.
It's always a challenge to find competitive pricing, especially recent competitive pricing. There's a standard of getting your prospect to share what the competition has done, but being proactive, what are the best avenues to find that information?
Yeah, that's a great question. Pricing is very difficult. Most vendors don't actually show their pricing, depending on the segment of the market you're in. If you're an SMB, sure, they'll maybe show their pricing, but when you go into mid-market and enterprise, they really don't. One of the best avenues that we've used, so we created a competitive intelligence Slack channel, right? We've gone ahead and made sure everybody's aware, and we got everybody engaged, by the way. Having your sales team engaged can be very difficult, but if they're brought into the table on how the competitive intelligence program is run, they all start getting involved. And so really in every type of deal that we have where we go into a competitive scenario, we try to get that information. Our account team is actually really good at working those relationships and having them share as much information as possible. And we collate that information and provide that when we do our competitive intelligence. It's a difficult question. And actually, others may have other suggestions on how to get that. But so far, in my segment and in my experiences, it's tough to get that anywhere online with any type of good accuracy. You got to rely on the ground, which is your sales team, to get that information for you.
That's great. Question here. I was getting ready to ask this one, so I'll ask it. How do you differentiate on pricing in the current economic situation? So budgets are tight. How do you prep your sales team to win over the competition?
That's a great question, and that's something that we've been facing over the last 6 months, for example. I'll give you an example in Airbase. Maybe this is a bit of an easy one, but I just mentioned to you, right? Most people traditionally have siloed solutions, right? So if you're competing, if you have maybe a suite of solutions, people are paying individually for Expensify, Bill.com, whatever else it is, they're paying these subscription costs. So immediately, what's the ROI impact? Right? If you consolidate them all and you save that money immediately. So that's one avenue. The other one is if you still have a value in your product around the efficiency that you get. We've worked with Forrester on a TEI, like an ROI calculator, to go ahead and actually bring up the quantifiable ROI that you're going to get, and then some of the secondary drivers of ROI. That's always been very helpful, especially as you go up market. Those ROI pieces are extremely important. But in terms of the pricing of it, you're looking at your competitors, you're seeing what they are, but the one thing I'd say is you don't want to discount your pricing too much, right? The one thing that I think is really important is that when you go ahead and pitch, and we've seen this working with the sales team, if you have a really strong value prop, right, and you've landed that with that prospect and they're the right ICP for you, that value should be landing, and now you just have to prove the value, right? So giving them the assets, I think, that they can go ahead and make that business case for is extremely important. So I talked about analysts, right? What's one of the things that analysts can do? They can help develop these assets. They can use this, your prospect, and help build the business case to go ahead and make that investment for that software that you're selling.
I love that. The idea of helping them justify the
That's a big thing. You need to help them justify, buying
Especially
is difficult, and you need to make it as easy as possible for them. How am I going to justify it if I don't have anything? How am I going to spend $50,000, $100,000 on this software just by myself? I'm going to speak to my buying team. It's very difficult, right? You need to make it as easy as possible for your prospects to go ahead and buy. And it's by providing them a bunch of this collateral, ideally third-party validated assets, right? Nothing that comes from you, right? Some stuff, you have your marketing stuff, but really the value is this analyst that covers the space is giving me this analysis. This is the ROI from a third party. These are what my other peers are saying. These are the reviews. Those type of pieces help.
That's great. I love this question at the top because I think everyone knows who it's coming from. since there was one. I'm a team of one. Any advice on how to adjust this strategy when I'm stretched so thin? Where should I start?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I was a team of one as well. So who was it that was the team of one? Okay. So it's tough. You know, being a team of one, not only do you have to educate everyone in the organization around the value and what you actually do, but I think you have to really quantify that value to the team and make sure that everyone sees it. So it requires constant communication. Like for me, we're at a fully remote company, and so that has its own challenges, and communication for a product marketer is so critical. What I've done is I actually provided monthly, I know it's a bit of a resource hog a little bit, but you have to provide monthly updates to the executive team, your VP of sales, your chief revenue officer, if you have a chief revenue officer, make them understand, hey, we're in these competitive scenarios 90% of the time. The sales team is involved with the competitive creation of these assets. We have this many competitors. I can only do 1 or 2. That's it. But everyone's begging for this. You've seen the value here. You're quantifying some of this value ideally, then raise that further investment need. So that's what we did. I did this a year ago. I said, look, I could only do this. You want all of this. You love this. Right? This is all the impact here. Extrapolate it, give me the money for the headcount, the tooling that I need, right? And they did, because they found the value. Get your VP of sales on board. If he's not on board, you're gonna have a tough time.
I like it. All right, next question. Sales enablement. Actually, let me check on time here. All right, we'll do one more. Sales enablement and product marketing are interlinked. How do you find balance in ownership with sales enablement KPIs and product marketing?
That's a great question. So I've worked in teams on product marketing where we don't have a sales enablement function, and that was very hard, and where we do have a sales enablement function. And I'm very grateful. I think the sales enablement conference is running right there, right? Very grateful for them over there. They really, really do help, and you build this partnership with them to make sure that all of this stuff that you're building, you're doing this product launch, we just did a major one, you have all of this value, you want to train your sales team on how to sell this, how to position this, how to talk about this to your prospects, but with the sales team, you need to reinforce this. You need to make sure they're consuming the content, they're engaged with the content. So we work personally, in my last 2 organizations with the sales enablement team, we've worked with them in the product launch process to make sure not only are they helping guide us around how we should be creating the training assets to make sure it's the most consumable for our sales team, but they're creating the trainings in a tool like an LMS or whatever it is. We have WorkRamp as an example, and they're actually going ahead and putting out the process of getting that training done, right? So they're following up with the training, they're executing the training, they're doing the follow-ups, they're actually hosting it with the product marketer. So they're really running the process of the training and reporting on those analytics for you. So I just got back a report, for example, that showed 94% of our sales team has went through the training, they've rated it for us, they've given us comments and feedback on how we can continuously improve. That's important. So sales enablement has worked to be an ally for us in executing and measuring and applying how we can learn and develop for us, for our product marketing team, right? So for product launches or new pricing and packaging, whatever else it may be. So, send a nice gift on the holiday season to them for you. They help.
Awesome. Thanks, Sander.
Cool.
Everyone give it up for Sander.
Thanks, guys.